What's going on, everybody? Jared Barnes here, host of the Jared Barnes Show. Thanks for tuning in today. Really appreciate it. It's January 4th. Welcome to the new year. This is my first episode of the new year, so again, thanks for tuning in. If you listen to this podcast and you listen part of the way through or the whole way through and you like it, please share it with a friend. It's going to help me grow. I would greatly appreciate that. And if you don't like it, pretend you never listened to it. Just do me that favor, and I'd greatly appreciate it. There's a couple things going on in the sporting world I need to talk about, want to talk about, and feel like I have to talk about. It's going to be a short episode. I got maybe 3 episodes coming out this week, so I'm pretty excited about that. Shout out to Steph Curry, the greatest shooter I've ever seen play in the NBA, and I think the greatest shooter alive. Went off for 62 points last night versus the Portland Trailblazers and literally put the Warriors on his back. A lot of respect for Steph, and he's going to have to continue to do that if he wants to do anything with this Warriors team this year in the current state they're in. But I hope he does it, and I hope that the Warriors somehow make the playoffs because Steph is so entertaining to watch. He's such a great basketball player and one of my favorites in the league. Now, the other thing that happened on Sunday night was the Sunday night football game. What a disgrace that game was. I don't think I've ever seen a team purposely, and I don't know if it was the coaches purposely try to lose the game. And that's what the Eagles did last night on Sunday Night Football. Absolutely ridiculous and disgusting. Doug Peterson must really be comfortable with the position that he's in and with the job that he's done this season, going, 4-11-1? Good for you, man. I'm glad you're comfortable purposely losing a game on prime time in front of the entire country watching you. A move like that feels illegal, honestly. I was just about to turn the game off, but I'm sitting on Twitter. I see a tweet from Mike Garafolo saying Nate Sudfeld is warming up on the sidelines. I go, oh boy, I better stick around for this and see what happens. I stuck around. Nate Sudfeld comes into the game, does exactly what I thought Nate Sudfeld would do. Didn't play very well. Not all to his own because, he again, Nate Sudfeld not a great quarterback, to say the least. And the weapons that Philly has, not great weapons anyways. I mean, they did go 4-11-1 for a reason. But, it was a terrible game to watch, a disgrace to the game of football. And Peterson was coaching to lose. The players, like always, are playing to win because that's what they get paid to do. They're paid to win. They are paid to go out and give their all and do everything they can to make sure their team wins. But the coaches, I guess, can do differently, and that's what Doug Peterson did, and it's wrong. If I was a player in that locker room, I would have lost all respect for Doug Peterson when I realized that he doesn't want to win this game. He just doesn't. He clearly does not want to win this football game. And, first thing I would do, I would immediately try to get out of there as quick as possible. I'd ask for a trade. I'd request a release. As quick as possible, I would run from that organization because if Doug Peterson is that comfortable, that clearly means he's probably coming back and that Howie Roseman is comfortable with him doing stuff like that. Yeah, there's a serious problem, and it feels like it's not going to get better for the Eagles, even though I feel like they have a guy in Jalen Hurts. It just doesn't feel great going forward. Yep. By losing the game, they got the 6th pick. They locked it up. By winning the game, they would have got the 9th pick. Doug Peterson knew that, and I think that's why what happened. But it's still ridiculous, and it was a terrible way to end the NFL season. Just an awful way to end it, the regular season at least. But the playoffs, which I am very excited about because the playoffs every single year are great. And I love the playoffs. I'm super pumped for the playoffs this year. And, now we got 6 wild card matchups, man. I'm just so happy. I'm so happy. And the schedule, it's released. We got the first matchup, 105 on CBS, Indianapolis at Buffalo. Looking forward to that one. There's actually going to be fans in the stadium. Super excited to see Bills Mafia out there repping for the Bills. Then the next game after that, the Rams at the Seahawks. Going to be another good game. Division rematch of the season. That will be fun to watch. Tampa Bay at Washington. Don't know if I'm all that excited for that game, but I like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers' chances in the playoffs this year because they start off with a good game. for them. I like that. I'll talk about it later in the week. I might have a guest, possibly Peyton Doyle, from the host of the Peyton Doyle Show. He might be on this week. I was messaging him asking if he wants to come on because he's a Browns fan. I'm a Steeler fan. They play this week. They play on Sunday. That's actually the last matchup of Wild Card Weekend. So what a way to end it. The other two matchups, Baltimore at Tennessee, Chicago at New Orleans. Listen, we're all hyped and we're all pumped for the playoffs. I'm excited. The team that no one wants to play in the playoffs is the Buffalo Bills. They are hot right now, and they are a buzzsaw that no one wants to get near. I like the Buffalo Bills a lot. I think they could be the team that comes out of the AFC. Although, the road ahead for them, not that simple, because if they beat Indianapolis, they have to face the Steelers, and then likely they'll probably face the Chiefs or the Ravens, depending upon, if the Ravens win, which I think the Ravens will, and then if the Ravens or whoever wins between the Ravens and Chiefs, that's probably who they'll end up playing if they make it that far. And I hope they do, because the Buffalo Bills are a good football team, and I would like to see them move far in the playoffs, even though I am a Steelers fan. But yeah, moving on from kind of the playoff talk, because I'm going to talk about that later this week. The bigger news, the news that everybody expected that came out, it's come out. The Jets have fired Adam Gase officially as of last night. They did it, I think, right before the Sunday Night Football game or right during it. Either way, it doesn't matter. They still fired him. And, it was a move that, out of all the head coaches that would possibly get fired in the next 2 or 3 days, was the least shocking because it feels like we all expected it to happen. Gase went 9-23 in 2 seasons with the Jets, and he did not do what he was hired to do. He was hired to develop Sam Darnold, and it feels like in the 2 years that he spent with Sam Darnold, he caused Sam Darnold to regress. And while we don't have much to base that off of, Sam Darnold in his first season definitely looked a lot better than he does currently. And if the question now about the Jets is, do they keep Sam Darnold? They have the number 2 pick. They don't have the number 1 pick, so they're not solidified that they're going to get Trevor. Justin Fields looked great this weekend, but the question with Justin is, I don't know if there's really a question with Justin. I just said that like there's a question, but I feel like Justin should and will go number 2 at this point. So I take that back. I don't think there's any question with Justin, but do you want to stick it out with Darnold and see what you have with him because it's still very young in his career, or do you move on from him? You have the number 2 pick that's going to be worth quite a bit, especially if Justin plays as well as he did versus Clemson versus Alabama. Like I said earlier, no one's shocked that the Jets released Adam Gase. But why'd they wait till the end of the season? That's the part that gets me. Who are they going after? If they wanted a shot at getting Eric Bieniemy or Robert Saleh, it feels like you should have fired Gase weeks ago. But they didn't. Who is Joe Douglas pursuing? It's interesting. A list really hasn't come out yet as far as I know. I haven't really been on Twitter for the last 20 minutes, so maybe a list has come out of who they're trying to pursue. Feels like Eric Bieniemy should be at the top of the list. Maybe Brian Daboll, I think that's how you say his name, from Buffalo, should be at the top of the list. I've heard some people, not some people that really matter, but some people that are interested in the situation say that maybe Joe Brady. But, if you wanted to get one of those good offensive gurus, why wouldn't you fire your coach weeks ago and try to get the one-up on him? Because the Falcons, they have interviews lined up with Robert Saleh and Eric Bieniemy this week. And who knows? If they fall in love with one of those guys, there's a good chance they will not get off the Zoom call with them until they are their head coach. Because that's kind of what happens. If you fall in love with the person, don't let them get right out of your door. Jeez, I stuttered that one. But don't let that person walk out of your door because you may never see him again. Because if you fell in love with him, someone else might fall in love with him. And I'm not sure who the Jets are even interested in. I said this. But reports are coming out that, Douglas is looking to make a big move in this offseason. So the person that wants to or gets hired by the Jets clearly is going to have to want to follow the same plan that Joe Douglas wants to follow. Because Joe Douglas wants to make a big move. That's the reports. And I don't know what that big move is, because I don't know how big of a move it would be if they moved on from Sam Darnold. I think the bigger move would be the move that I'm thinking it's going to be, and the Jets move the 2nd overall pick. Because they know that a team wanting a franchise guy like Justin Fields or possibly Trevor Lawrence is going to give up a boatload of picks, possible great players, for that draft position. And that is huge capital and assets you can get for that number 2 pick. Because Joe Douglas understands one thing. Rome was not built overnight. And you're not going to turn your team into a playoff team in one offseason. And he understands that. And that's why I like Joe Douglas. I trust Joe Douglas. I hope the New York media will give Joe Douglas the proper amount of time. And I hope the rest of the media will not be so impatient with Joe Douglas, but let him work out his plan. Because I think it's going to be 2 or 3 years before we really see the Jets significantly look like a lot better team and really compete, if all goes well for them. But that's just kind of how I feel about that situation. You know, and with today being Black Monday in the NFL, this is the day that inevitably sees a lot of coaches get fired. Although I'm not sure who is going to lose their job, considering that there are, 4 jobs open already, with a 5th expected if Doug Marrone loses his job in Jacksonville. That's quite a lot of coaching positions. There was a lot of coaches hired last year, so I don't know if anybody else is going to lose their job. The only other 2 people on the hot seat are Doug Peterson and Anthony Lynn. And Doug Peterson seems very comfortable with his position, clearly, if you watched last night's Sunday Night Football game. And I don't think Anthony Lynn should be on the hot seat, personally. And I'll discuss that here in a minute. But if your team is looking to hire a head coach, who do you want to see them hire? And why? I want to kind of hear from you guys. Tweet me at hashtag the Jared Barnes Show, because that's not going to get a lot of tweets. So tweet that one and tell me who your head coach should hire. Or just message me or DM me on my Instagram. I'd like to hear from you. It's going to be kind of intriguing. Now, like I just mentioned, a coach that is on the hot seat, possibly, that I think deserves to keep his job is Anthony Lynn. The Chargers dealt with quite a bit of injuries this year. Derwin James didn't take a single snap. Melvin Ingram only played 7 games, and he really wasn't fully healthy when he played, so his numbers were down. Melvin Ingram might not return, but either way, you get it. There was quite a bit of injuries that the Chargers dealt with this season. And, based on just week 1 of the Chargers starting lineup, and they had a combined 190 games missed from their starters due to injury. That is first in the NFL. There was not a lot of positive things that came out of this Chargers season, especially if you watch the Chargers a lot. You could see that sometimes they would be very, very conservative, especially with Justin Herbert. Just all the time, in fourth quarters especially, very, very conservative. Did not seem to, they were looking to win, but also didn't want to get too aggressive and do anything to put Justin in a spot where he was going to make a mistake. Understandable. You have a rookie guy. You want to teach him the NFL ropes, not put him in bad positions. And they had him in good positions all year long. They just happened to lose close games and nail biters due to being so conservative. And, that's kind of the negative that you take away. But again, I think the Chargers were like 6-10 or 7-9. Still pretty impressive when you think about how many injuries they dealt with. And the way the season unfolded in like week 2 or 3 when Justin Herbert had to come in almost unannounced because of what happened to Tyrod. Him doing what he did, then him turning into the inevitably Offensive Rookie of the Year. A very impressive year for them. And I think a lot of that is the reasoning I would say Anthony Lynn needs to stay, because the one positive thing is the Chargers have a guy in Justin Herbert. He is the future of the franchise, really. So that is the positive takeaway from this year. And I was high on the guy coming out. You could kind of see if you watch Hard Knocks that, wow, this guy was going to be special. I mean, he had a massive arm. He seemed to have all the talent. Yeah, coming out in the draft, he got knocked a little bit because he was born and raised in Eugene, Oregon. He played football in Eugene, Oregon. He was kind of a quiet leader and kind of a quiet guy, but turns out very, very good at football, and sometimes you shouldn't take those poor things like that into consideration, because it's not like anybody ever came out after him and said he was a bad teammate or anything like that. No one really did. So, Justin Herbert was taken 6th, and he was the best quarterback and best rookie in this draft. So good for the Chargers on landing their guy. But like I said, Herbert's the reason. And I think Lynn should keep his job specifically because of Justin Herbert, not because he drafted Herbert. I think Lynn and the GM work well together, and I like Lynn's coaching staff. Specifically, Lynn's quarterback coach, Pep Hamilton. I like the chemistry that Justin and Pep have. And I really just want to see the growth of Justin Herbert in his second year in the Anthony Lynn system, led with Pep Hamilton as the quarterback coach. That's going to be intriguing to me, because I just want to see if he makes a leap, if he takes a step back. I want to see. I think if he gets a new system, a new coach, a whole new coaching staff, you're going to see him take quite a step back. But I think if you give a young guy consistency, you're going to see consistent play and leaps and bounds and growth. That's just the simple fact of anything, really. But that's just kind of how I feel about that. So, Chargers fans, I don't know how you feel about Anthony Lynn, but that's my thoughts on Anthony Lynn. If you want him fired still, I get it. His conservativeness was an issue. I get it. You guys could have won more games. But let's be honest. It's not like the Chargers can really win their division with the Chiefs in it. So that's kind of a good excuse that Lynn has. And it's not like the AFC wasn't the most competitive that it's ever really been in the last couple of years. So there's also that. And I think the Chargers played well all year. And, if they come back next year under the same coaching staff and don't have those injury problems, I mean, watch out. That's going to be a dangerous team. Possibly 10 to 11 wins, in my opinion. So, yeah. I'm going to take a short break real quick. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to talk about my reaction to kind of bowl season in general and a little more Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields talk. So, again, this is Jared Barnes, host of the Jared Barnes Show. Hope you're enjoying this episode. I will be right back. All right, everybody, I'm back. And, like I said, I had some college football stuff to talk about, little Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields, so let's just hop right into it. And, bowl season at this point's pretty much wrapped up. And my biggest takeaway, bowl season sucks. I used to love it. But opt-outs have absolutely killed it. Let's be honest, the playoffs should be expanded. At this point, we all know that. Listen, two of the biggest bowl games I was excited about was Florida, Oklahoma. Opt-outs killed that game because Florida's pretty much whole receiving core did not play. 38 of the 42 touchdowns, I think that's the number I read earlier, that Kyle Trask threw were to receivers and Kyle Pitts, the tight end, that opted out. UNC had quite a bit of opt-outs as well. And that was the other game that I was excited to watch, UNC Texas A&M. They had quite a bit of opt-outs, and it ended up coming back to bite them as they ended up losing late, very late in the game. With 3 minutes to go, they gave up 2 touchdowns. So, yeah, the opt-outs are killing bowl season. If you enjoy that as a college football fan, you know exactly how I feel. It's frustrating because the best bowl game that I watched was the Cure Bowl, personally. And it's not even really that close. because there wasn't like opt-outs in that game. Those were two teams just fighting it out amongst each other, and it was an entertaining game, and that was the best bowl game I watched. And probably shouldn't have been, because it wasn't the two most talented teams. No way Liberty and Coastal Carolina would have matched up versus anybody else. But it was the funnest that I watched, because they were battling back and forth. They were evenly matched. But other games, they were supposed to be evenly matched and fun games to watch, just were not. I mean, if you watched that North Carolina-Texas A&M game and you watched the first quarter and a half, you probably turned it off, because it was getting to be somewhat of a snooze fest. There wasn't a lot of points being scored. Both offenses were massively struggling. And the defenses, yeah, they were playing good, but that's because the offenses were just failing to execute on anything that was happening. And let's be honest. We all know that expanding the playoffs is going to massively help bowl season. You're going to incentivize these players that are opting out to play, because some of these players are on teams that, if you expanded the playoffs, would be competing for championships. They're going to play. That's their end-all, be-all goal, to win a championships. Let's be honest. The playoffs are just starting to get stale. If you watched the two playoff games, you thought you knew what the outcome was going to be, and one of them probably turned out to be right. I thought that Alabama was going to beat Notre Dame for sure. They did that. The scoreboard said it was closer than it was, but let's be honest, it was a dominant win by Alabama. Notre Dame came in with the backdoor cover, so if you betted on them, good for you. If not, oh well, I didn't bet the game. So, and the other game, Ohio State, Clemson. Ohio State just pummeled Clemson. I mean, Clemson really didn't play very well at all. I mean, their offensive coordinator had COVID, so that kind of messed them over. They didn't really have opt-outs, but then, the offensive line couldn't block anything, so there was that. And Ohio State ended up winning, but the game wasn't close at all. And, either way, you're going to get blowouts if you expand it or not. That's going to happen because, especially in a season with COVID, because you really don't know who teams are like you thought you did. And I thought Clemson was a good team. A lot of people said they were maybe a little overrated. That turns out to be right, I guess, as they got pummeled by Ohio State. But, if you expand the playoffs, you're going to get more matchups. There's a chance that an upset happens. There's a chance that a blowout happens. There's a chance that a close game happens, because that's football. Either way, it's going to happen. And, every national championship game over the last 7 years has featured Ohio State, Clemson, or Alabama. And even back those numbers up even more, Alabama and Clemson have made 6 of the last 7, because there's only been 7, college football playoffs. Ohio State's appeared in 4, and Oklahoma has appeared in 4. So it's consistent that you're going to see the same teams over and over again in those 4 spots, the big names in college football, the people that dominate the recruiting, and the people that just tend to be on top. Yeah, we're going to see that regardless of whether you expand it or not. But let's throw Florida in there for once. Let's throw Cincinnati in there for once. Georgia. I mean, there were some teams this year that I think could have competed for a championship that just was not given that opportunity because they were not one of the top 4 schools. And let's be honest, if you give us 8 teams, you're going to see more competitive games. That's just how I feel. At this point, I'm starting to get frustrated with college football because it's been very eerily similar every single year. It feels like we get the same matchup every single year in the playoffs and every single year in the championship. It's starting to get to be the point where it's not interesting anymore and it's not all that fun to watch. And, next year if the playoffs don't get expanded and we see very similar teams to what's in it this year, because that's probably what we'll see, and we'll probably see very similar outcomes. And let's be honest, college football is not going to change anything until we stop watching, and we're going to continue to watch, and that's the big problem. So, because I'm not going to stop watching, I'm still going to watch it. I know myself. There's no way if it's on, then I'm not going to put it on. So, but I just want to see it expanded. At this point, it's starting to get boring, like I said. Now moving on to my final topic of the episode, something that I could have led the show off with, but thought, the Sunday Night Football game just had to be it. NFL had to be it because it was the closest thing that happened. So it's about the Ohio State-Clemson game, and it's specifically about the two quarterbacks for both teams, Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence. Let's not overreact about Justin Fields. As that game was going on, if you're sitting on Twitter like me, you are seeing so many people saying, hey, maybe Justin should be the number one overall pick. Then you see jersey swaps of Justin. Then you see Adam Schefter posting, what if? I know Adam Schefter's just stirring the pot, doing what he has to do to be relevant on social media, but I kind of found it annoying. Justin Fields is great. Justin Fields is a fantastic quarterback, and Justin Fields locked himself into that number 2 position, in my opinion. But we shouldn't, if Justin Fields is so good, this game shouldn't have come off as shocking. This game shouldn't have been something that was like, oh, he can do that? No, it shouldn't have been. It should have been something we expected. If Justin Fields has a game like that, we're shocked. If Trevor has a game like that, it's expected. And that's why Trevor's the number 1 overall pick. Like I said, Justin Fields is great. We've watched him since high school. We watched him not get playing time at Georgia. Imagine if Georgia rolls with Justin over Jake Fromm. They might not be in the position they're in now. They might have won a national championship. That's just my personal opinion. They chose to pick Jake Fromm because he had such a great hold on the offense. But I digress. Justin Fields is a fantastic quarterback, and he's going number 2 overall, in my opinion. Now, if you listened earlier in the episode, you might know that I think the Jets might trade out of that position. So it might not be the Jets that take him, but I think he will be taken 2nd overall. Now, like I said, he's impressive. It was an impressive game. From the rib shot to him being injured, struggling, not really struggling, but him being injured, and you could see that it was bothering him, to just absolutely balling out. It was a game for the ages for Justin Fields. But if Trevor Lawrence does that, we're not shocked. Now, let's be honest, Trevor got no help all night. You shouldn't look at this game and base it off of, oh, this Trevor can't do it in the pros because of this game. No. This is a game that you definitely want to scout Trevor and see what he did, because this is a game against NFL level competition. And his offensive line, not an NFL offensive line at all. And he didn't get help all night from them. He got no time to pass the football and no time to really move in the pocket and make a play. Yet he still threw for 300 plus yards and 3 touchdowns. No interceptions. He fumbled the ball quite a bit, but yeah, when you're dropping back, you haven't even finished your 3rd step in your 3-step drop, and you're getting hit by a defensive end, that's quite a problem. The play calling was also a little predictable. Clemson was out. Their offensive coordinator, Brian Elliott, was not able to be at the game or be in the booth because he had COVID, so he was out, and the play calling was predictable. I think they ran that fake pitch 7 or 8 times, and it didn't work because Ohio State's number 1 job for the night was to slow down and stop the run of Trevor Lawrence. Let Travis Etienne be the guy that runs the ball, and they can stop that. They knew they could stop that, and they did, because they knew if they shut down Lawrence, the run game was easy to shut down because that offensive line was bad, and it showed. Trevor Lawrence is still the number 1 overall pick. And, I kind of had a video last week with my brother where we discussed the possibility of the trading of the number 1 overall pick. Come on now. You don't actually think we think that the Jaguars would trade the number 1 overall pick? Come on. We were doing it for discussion purposes pretty much only. We know that Trevor Lawrence is going to get picked number 1. We know that. It's a fact at this point. The guy has been the projected number 1 overall pick pretty much since coming out of high school. There's been no quarterback typed up like him since Andrew Luck. That's a fact. Justin Fields is great, but he's always been behind Trevor, and that's going to continue. Even if he balls out versus Alabama and Ohio State wins the national championship, I still don't think it's going to elevate him to above Trevor. Now it may, and I may have to eat my words on this one, and I will eat my words on this one if that ends up becoming a fact and the truth. But as of right now, I just don't see how it can be. But I love Justin and I love Trevor. They are both going to be good NFL quarterbacks wherever they go. Wherever they go. They're franchise guys, in my opinion. Justin can do a little more with his legs, but he still has just as good as an arm as Trevor does. Trevor's a true leader. Trevor's a great guy. And, my favorite moment of the game on Saturday was when Trevor walked off for what might have been his last time on the field, and Dabo kind of covered his eyes because Dabo knew he was going to be crying. And Dabo wanted everybody to know, hey, keep your head up. You're our guy. You were our guy. You're the absolute best I've ever seen. And I'm proud of you, kid. And he didn't want people to see Trevor upset and crying because this is a guy that the spotlight has been on for 3 years. This is the guy that the spotlight is going to continue to follow for the next 10 to 15 if he stays healthy. Knock on wood that he doesn't have a serious injury, but it's always possible. It's always possible, and I hate to even think about that. But I'm just excited for the future of the NFL because there are young quarterbacks coming in every single year that are just absolutely great. We got 2 to 3 maybe this year, 2 to 3 the year prior, and 2 to 3 the year prior to that. So it's just crazy the amount of young quarterbacks coming in the NFL. The quarterback market is starting to become just overwhelmingly full. There's so many guys. It almost feels like there's more guys that can be starters in the league than there is starting positions, and I don't feel like we've had that problem within the last 10 years. So that's an exciting problem to have as an NFL fan and as someone who follows the NFL. Again, that's pretty much all I got for you today. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review. If you're listening on Apple, if you're listening on Spotify, just, subscribe, follow the podcast. I appreciate y'all. Check out my social medias at The Jared Barnes Show on Instagram and TikTok, and at Jared Barnes Show on Twitter. Again, love every single one of you that listen. Share it with a friend if you liked it, because it's going to help me grow, and that means the most to me. And I love and appreciate you guys that continue to watch, though, because you guys are the absolute greatest. And let's have a 2021, Super excited for this year. Let's go. Have a great day.